Okay, well, people are still coming into the room. I would like to welcome you to today's lunchtime talks. I am Julie Clark. I'm with UC Agriculture and Natural Resources based in Ventura Cooperative Extension offices. With me today is Constance Taylor with Cal Invasive Plant Council. And we'll be hosting you and our speaker, Randall Oliver, today. For those of you who don't know, the lunchtime talks are part of a statewide endeavor that's annual, hosted by California Department of Fish and Wildlife to bring awareness and attention and information about various types of invasive species in the state. The lunchtime talks are hosted daily at noon this week, and we have a wide variety of speakers. Yesterday, our speaker talked about shipping, the shipping industry and how invasive species are introduced that way. Tomorrow, we will have speakers addressing feral cats. On Thursday, the various fruit fly infestations in the state, and on Friday, biocontrol of yellow star thistle. The California Invasive Species Action Week started last weekend and goes through June 9th. Randall Oliver is the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources statewide invasive shothole borer communications coordinator. He has been with the program several years. I personally consider him a leading expert in the topic, and I am sure you will learn a lot from Randall's his presentation today. Boy, thank you, Randall. Welcome.
All right. Thank you, Julie. So, after more than a decade, the battle against invasive shothole borers rages on. And it's easy to get complacent. It's easy to think that the battle is won. We lose sight of the enemy. We stop looking. And then there it is. It reemerges exactly where we didn't expect it. In today's talk, I hope to give you some updates and insights into that ongoing battle. I'll keep several objectives in mind, and hopefully, I want you to understand the basic biology of this pest, understand the effects on trees and the associated risks, understand what management options are available and what should be considered in planning for this. Have a good overview of educational resources that are available where you can get more information. And hopefully along the way, we'll clear up a few misunderstandings that I think are out there currently. So I will talk about the biology of the beetle and its symbiotic fungi, the effects and impact of beetle infestations, distribution in California, signs and symptoms of infestation, as well as other look-alike pests that might have the same signs. And I'll talk about management. I'll talk not only from the perspective of the things that we can do if we're out there managing our land, our trees, but also what you can do if you're just the average California resident. And there are definitely steps that you can take no matter who you are. I'll end up by discussing some of the resources available where you can learn more about the pest disease complex and stay up to speed on the current research and developments and management efforts. Before I do that, since it is California Invasive Species Action Week, I'd like to just briefly talk about what an invasive species is. So it can be a plant or an animal. It's non-native to whatever this new environment that it's at. It's also harmful. So it has to have those two characteristics. It's non-native and it's also harmful either to the environment, to the economy, or to human health. And although it's not a criteria, one of the characteristics is that it typically has few or no natural enemies in that new environment, and it's capable of rapid spread. So throughout this discussion, keep that last point in mind. The rapid spread is really critical to understanding invasive species in general and the invasive shothole borer in particular. So on to the biology of the beetles as well as the fungal complex. So invasive shothole borers, it's a common name, refers to several species of ambrosia beetles that are native to Southeast Asia. And when I talk about the size of these beetles, they are really small. They're basically the size of a sesame seed, or if you look at this picture on the left, roughly the size of Lincoln's nose. The male, which is the lighter colored one on the left, is even smaller. So this category includes the polyphagous shothole borer and the Kuroshio shothole borer, both of which are found in California now. And also the tea shothole borer, which is a much more benign pest. And that one is not found in California at this time. I mentioned a moment ago that these are ambrosia beetles. So what that means is that their food source is not wood. They tunnel into trees, they don't actually eat the wood. What they do eat is a symbiotic fungi that they bring with them as they're tunneling into the tree. And that fungus then spreads in the tree. And eventually, over some period of time, that's what will kill the tree. That is why we refer to this tree-killing combination as invasive shothole borers Fusarium dieback complex. And Fusarium refers to the main type of symbiotic fungi. It's not the only one, but that's the main one that's causing this problem. So first, let's talk a little bit about how these got here. They're pretty far from their native range. Since it feeds on the fungus, it's not eating the wood, it feeds on the fungus. So as long as wood that's downed or dead continues to have a moisture content that can support that fungus, the beetles can continue to live in that downed wood. In California, the polyphagous shothole borer was first detected in Los Angeles. In San Diego, they first detected the Kuroshio shothole borer. We're pretty sure that how it got here was on container ships, in pallets, or packing crates. I can't guarantee that, but that's the logical explanation. And yet it continues to spread in California. So we think that the current mechanism that it's spreading with, because it can't fly very far, is either on firewood or green waste movement. So it got here with the help of people, and it's continuing to spread with the help of people. So the beetle's life cycle begins with a female beetle attacking a healthy host tree. The female tunnels into the tree, making these what we call galleries, essentially tunnels where she'll lay up to 57 eggs. Most of those are fertilized, which means that they will become females. There's a very few number that are not fertilized, and those will become males. The females are the ones that go on to leave that initial gallery and go off to establish galleries of their own, either in the same tree or in other trees. At the same time, that fungus, as she's chewing in there, that's inoculated into the gallery wall. And then the developing larvae feed on the fungus in the gallery. They mate with their siblings or with their mother. When they're mature, the females leave the gallery. Typically, they stay on that same host tree, making their own new galleries, and that process continues. The fungus continues to colonize the wood beyond the gallery wall. And then that fungus causes branch dieback and eventually, in many species, tree mortality. The host tree dies and the adults leave that host to find a new host. And how long that takes varies with such factors as climate and what the host species is. Keep in mind what I said earlier about the ability to reproduce rapidly and to spread. So this slide shows population growth, and it makes the assumption that just 5 daughters survive from each subsequent brood. So that's, if you've got 57, up to 57 eggs, you're talking somewhere between 10 and 20% of the beetles survive. So within just 7 generations, you get up to 100,000 beetles in the tree. A few more generations later, you can see that this is a logarithmic increase. So you get up to 1 million in not too many generations later. So how long does that take? Typically in Southern California, if you have ideal weather conditions, climate conditions, you can have 5 to 11 generations per year. So you could get up into these numbers within 1 year to 2 years very easily. So what trees are susceptible? There's 247 species of trees that are attacked. 78 species can support ISHB reproduction. 17 tree species are killed. And you can find that information in the UC IPM pest note. If you go to www.ishb.org and look under resources, you can find that pest note. There's a ton of other resources available on that website. It's a great source for information. So where should we focus our attention? On those 17 that are killed, that are most susceptible to this, in particular, box elder. That's like the ice cream or the candy for these beetles. They just love it and they can kill it very quickly. Also sycamores, other riparian trees like willows, cottonwoods, castor bean. In the city parks and on street trees, you'd also see it on London plane, which is a sycamore hybrid, English oak. These species will be hit the first, they will be hit the hardest. They are the ones that can be killed. And then once those preferred hosts are near death, the beetles will move on to less desirable hosts. But these are the ones they're going to go after first. So what is the potential impact of ISHB-FD? In severely infested trees, the beetles and their associated fungi, well, they cause tree decline, branch dieback, tree death. Trees with heavily infested branches can be severe hazards since the combined damage of the tunneling and the fungus disease can cause the limbs to break and fall, potentially hitting cars or people that are underneath. 2017 study looked at the cost or potential cost of this activity, found that 1/3 of SoCal's 71 million urban trees are susceptible to ISHB-FD. And if just half of those were to die, the replacement cost would be nearly $16 billion. And that doesn't include lost ecosystem services, lost aesthetic value. Those were looked at on a smaller scale analysis done a couple of years ago. It was led by UC A&R's Dr. Karen Jetter. And again, you can find details of that study on the ISHB.org website. So to review, as the fungus spreads, it leads to branch dieback. It can spread very quickly in some species, like the box elder that you see here on the left. And as the tree becomes severely infested, what we call amplifier trees, they become not only a severe safety hazard, but also a source for beetles to infest other trees. They also may become susceptible to secondary infestations such as bot cankers. We've seen devastating effects in Southern California, in places like the Tijuana River Valley, where there were 140,000 willow trees that were just devastated. And Laguna Niguel Regional Park, where 500 amplifier trees were removed. At University of California, Irvine, there were almost 1,000 trees that had to be removed. So these are having a very serious impact throughout Southern California. Where are they now? They are in 7 counties in Southern California, so just about every county that is in Southern California, going from San Diego all the way up to Santa Barbara. And we just found this new find in San Jose. I would say on the new find that there's both a good news and bad news story here. So first of all, we know a lot more about management of this pest disease complex than we did a decade ago when it was first hitting Southern California. We also have lots of resources for public outreach to try to educate people in the area about the pest and what it can do and what they can do to help combat it. So those are really good things. But we also have a number of more negative factors. First of all, the infestation appears to have been there for at least 5 years. There are a lot of box elders and other favorite hosts of this pest in the area, and many of the trees are severely infested. There are questions about which entity owns the area's trees. Removals will be difficult in many cases because of the riparian environment, and there are many homeless people living in the area. So that is going to make management and removals very difficult. So here's where I want to dispel another of those misconceptions that I think are out there. Some people that I've talked to recently seem to think that this problem has gone away in Southern California, or at least has been greatly diminished. And I'm going to tell you that it hasn't, but you need to be looking for it to find it. And that's part of the problem. In some cases, yes, I agree that people that have taken an IPM approach, they're out there monitoring their trees, they're taking action, they have been able to control it, and that's great. But it keeps popping up in new places where it hasn't been treated or monitored. And this happened in Anaheim following the pandemic. Disneyland was supporting trapping at nearby parks and not finding major infestations prior to the pandemic. During the pandemic, that trapping stopped as funding dried up, and then city, county, other employees were furloughed. A couple years later, one of those nearby parks became severely infested, and they had to remove about 20 amplifier trees. We're currently experiencing something very similar to that in Ladera Ranch community in South Orange County. And as we've seen, it's now reached Northern California, San Jose. So this is not a threat that has gone away. It's a problem that's going to remain with us for some time to come. So visual surveys are critical to stopping the spread and managing this pest. But the beetle, as we've said, is very small, difficult to find. You're probably not going to see it on the trunk of the tree unless the weather's just right and you're looking really closely at a tree that you know is infested. So if you're not going to find the beetle, most likely, what should you look for? These are some of the symptoms and signs that are indicative of this pest. They vary depending on the host species. Staining, you'll find this on sycamores in particular, frass or basically sawdust in this case, because again, keep in mind the beetles aren't eating wood, so it's not passing through their digestive system. They're just pushing that sawdust out of the tree. There's gumming on some trees, sugary buildups on trees like avocados. Sometimes they call these sugar volcanoes. But you may or may not find these signs and symptoms, and these alone could be indicative of some other pests. So what you do want to look for always is this perfectly round hole, roughly the size of the tip of a medium ballpoint pen. And that is very characteristic of invasive shothole borers. So you look for that hole when you find these other symptoms. Oh, and also on a severely infested tree, I think we sort of alluded to this earlier, you may also look at the top of the tree and you can see the dieback. So that's a pretty good reason to look a little closer. What are those lookalikes? There's the fruit tree shothole borer, scolitis. This leaves bigger holes, generally not considered as bad of a pest because it typically goes after stressed or diseased trees. The western oak bark beetle has smaller holes, also perfectly round, can often be accompanied by these foamy excretions or exudate. The lesser shothole borer or pinhole borer, very similar symptoms, but smaller holes. And again, these types of things tend to go after trees that are already stressed or diseased, so not considered nearly the threat. So again, what should you look for? Look for those very specific sized entry exit holes that are the size of the medium ballpoint pen tip. What trees do you look at first? These ones that are most affected, the box elders, the sycamores, the willows. How do you confirm that it is invasive shothole borer, or what kind of invasive shothole borer it is? Visually, you can get a pretty good idea that it is shothole borer, particularly if it has these various signs and symptoms that we've just gone through. To confirm what type of shothole borer it is, you can do a beetle sample, confirm it with DNA through the CDFA lab, or with a tissue sample, you can identify the fungus. If it's the symbiote that's related to either the Crocea or the polyphagus. But unless you're finding these beetles in a place where they haven't been found before, this probably isn't necessary because the way we manage the pest is going to be identical in either case. So this leads us into the second misconception that I think is out there. People ask, if I have shothole borer infestation, is that a death sentence for my tree? Because I've heard that there's nothing you can do about it. Well, that's simply not true. It might have been true 10 years ago, but over time, we've developed best management practices for this pest disease complex. There are ways to halt the spread and to manage the infestations that we're currently experiencing. And those include things like monitoring trees, management of infested trees, and correct disposal of infested wood. Monitoring can include visual inspection of trees as well as trapping. The visual inspection is critical and definitely the first thing that should be done. Trapping can help in several ways as well. Can augment the visual surveys. It can help identify areas with high beetle concentrations, can help to identify where the possible amplifiers are. It can also help to determine the best times to apply treatments, which are typically done during the peak flight times in spring and fall. And again, these beetles aren't flying far, but they might be going, from a stand of trees in one location to, maybe 1,000 yards away, something like that. But these traps can definitely help to generate that kind of data. So once we've identified that a tree has an infestation, the thing we're next wanting to do is to identify the level of infestation, whether it's low, moderate, heavy, or severe. So low is less than 50 entry-exit holes. Moderate would be 50 to 150. Heavy would be 150 and above without dieback. Severe is greater than 150 with dieback. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about amplifier trees. And the other thing you want to be looking at is the branch collar. You want to see if there's a heavier infestation in that area. You want to see if there's secondary infestations of something like cankers. Those cankers, if they're there, could also be the way that the beetles were able to get into certain host species. Is the entry hole, are they active or inactive? We're primarily concerned with the active entry holes. Sometimes you'll see holes that are scarred over. They might have bark growing over the holes. And we might also, if we don't see that kind of callousing, might see a hole that, it doesn't look moist. You're not quite sure whether that is an active hole or not. So what can be done is we can take a little paintbrush, paint over the hole. And then if there is an active infestation, there's a beetle in there, she will basically reopen the hole. Sometimes that could take place in just a matter of minutes. Sometimes it could be a day or even longer. But you paint over that, come back the next day, see and if it's reopened or not, and then maybe check it again later. So the level of infestation, the host species, the hazard level, the tree value are all going to provide inputs into how an infested tree should be managed. We always want to start with the option that has the lowest possible adverse consequence for the local environment and human health. So we're taking an integrated pest management approach. We want to, first of all, check and monitor all trees, but we only want to treat infested trees. There's no effective preventative treatment for ISHB, so we're going to treat the infested tree. We're not going to treat the other trees. For lightly infested trees, we may do nothing other than monitoring. If specific branches are infested, we might want to remove those. Anecdotally, we have seen that lightly infested trees can recover on their own if the amplifier trees in the area have been removed. So we always want to be sure that all those amplifier trees are removed before we take other actions. Moderately infested trees can also benefit from branch removals. They also can be treated with chemicals such as trunk sprays systemic soil injection or drenching or trunk injection with a pesticide combined with a fungicide. Chemical treatments like this require a licensed applicator that are applying according to the label. This is not something that people should do on their own at home. Always get the experts. If trunk injections are applied, the injection sites should also be treated with Bacillus subtilis. That's to prevent secondary infections such as bot cankers. High value, highly infested trees such as heritage trees can also be treated, but you should just know survival is not guaranteed. And then right now, there are not biological controls that are being utilized, but they are being studied using endophytes, which are microorganisms that are within the trees themselves, and or parasitoids. Those are both being researched and should be available somewhere in the medium to long term. Severely infested amplifier trees, these are the ones with 150 active entry-exit holes plus dieback. These are highly compromised. They can be serious hazards. They should be removed as soon as possible, and the stumps should be removed and ground. Taking proper care of green waste is also critical. As I said, you want to grind stumps if at all possible, because the beetles can still live on if there's moisture in that wood. Chipping to less than 1 inch kills 99.9% of the beetles, so almost everything. Less than 3 inches kills 98%, and then that can be combined with solarizing or composting. You've just got logs, they can be solarized or kiln dried, but one thing, definitely, if you are going to move chips to a composting facility, or you're going to move logs to a facility like that, or someplace where they're going to be kiln dried, be sure that that wood is covered when it's in transit, because you don't want beetles escaping while it's being moved. What can you do if you're a resident and you want to save your trees? So step one is keep your trees healthy. So proper irrigation and maintenance, that keeps the trees strong and protects them from ISHB and other tree pests. So you want to water enough, but not overwater. Same with fertilizer. Don't fertilize too much. There's some belief that what happened with the Tijuana River Valley was releases of waste product actually amplified the situation for the beetles. So we want to do what's required to keep the trees healthy, keep them properly maintained, trimmed. Work with a licensed arborist on these things if you've got tree questions. Secondly, check your trees. And I would add, don't just check your trees, but if you're out walking in your neighborhood, take it upon yourself to look at the trees there. Look for those signs and symptoms that we've talked about. Look for those possible entry-exit holes. Monitor these on a regular basis. If you have a hobby like you like to hike, make this part of your hiking routine, or whatever outdoor activity you do. Just try to factor this in them. Confirm suspected infestations. There's a great tool on that ISHB.org site to confirm detection and whether this is something that you have or not. Just know what your options are in terms of management. Properly trim trees, treat tree wounds or cut wounds with that Bacillus subtilis or some other agent to keep it getting infestations that would allow the beetles who then infest the trees. Take care of the green waste. I think we've addressed this point already, but keep in mind those beetles can survive and cut wood for weeks or even months. A certified arborist or pest control professional can provide recommendations on how to manage your issues based on the conditions of your tree. So consult the professionals. Your county ag commissioner's office or UC Cooperative Extension may have additional knowledge about what the conditions are in your area and what steps can take place at your site. And not only these pests, but other tree-killing insects often reach new locations by hitchhiking in firewood. We're also seeing a growing spread of the gold-spotted oak borer in Southern California. We're pretty sure it's moving on firewood. This pest is also moving on firewood and green waste. So buy firewood where you're going to use it, and only purchase the amount of firewood that you're actually going to need. And then when you're done, if you have leftover wood, do not take that home with you. Don't move unburned firewood. And lastly, where to go for more information. I keep directing you to the ISHB.org site. There's a link to an online course that's 1 hour. It's free. It does require registration. There's a brief overview. There's the online detection and management tool that I just talked about, an introductory video, upcoming events, the what's new section, and then there's also a sign up for emails. There are a number of videos on there. There's the introduction. There's a video on trapping, one on monitoring, which includes both visual surveys and sampling, and then management of the pest and the disease. This is a big problem. There's many organizations and individuals that are contributing to the efforts to work with this. And that's a good thing because it is such a serious threat to California's forest and woodlands. And within that, I'm including the urban forest. We've been very fortunate up to this point to receive support and funding through the Invasive Species Council of California and the California Invasive Species Advisory Council. CAL FIRE has had funds in the past to provide funds for trapping and tree removals, but that does not exist at the moment. And this problem is not going away. So more funds are definitely needed. A quick shout out and acknowledgement to many of the contributors to these efforts. It's by no means a comprehensive list, and I apologize to anyone I've left off here. And also, if you're a user of social media, you can also check out ISHB information on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube channel. Lastly, here's my contact information. If you have questions, please feel free to email me at rdoliver@ucanr.edu or call me at the number that you see here. And that's my presentation for today. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Excellent. Thank you, Randall. Yes, we do have some questions. So somebody was wondering if they could see the list of trees again, if you wouldn't mind going back to that slide so they could take a look.
Okay.
And Randall, we put the list from the host list into the chat.
Oh, good.
From the website. We've also shared the website ishb.org, which is essentially a clearinghouse for management, identification, science, publications, handouts, anything invasive shothole borers. That link is also in the chat. Randall, I put your email address in the chat as well. And a reminder to everyone, please put your questions in the Q&A section, and we will be monitoring them and having Randall address them as they come up.
Okay, so let's see. Irene is asking, can you please distinguish amplifier versus host?
Okay, so those terms, amplifier and host, are very different things. So by host, and here we're talking more specifically about a reproductive host. So a reproductive host is any tree that the beetle can reproduce in. As we said in this slide, there's 78 species that we know can support ISHB reproduction. Over 65 of those are commonly found in California, either as riparian types of trees, so they're out in the wilderness, or landscape trees. Some of these are natives, some of them are more like landscape trees that have been brought in. So they're non-natives, but they're not invasive trees. Amplifier, we're talking about something very different. Amplifier refers to the most severely infested trees. These are those trees that have 150 or more entry-exit holes, plus they have dieback. And they are a severe safety risk. Branches can fall on people, causing injuries. The trees basically are dying, so they're fuel for fires. Additionally, they have so many beetles in them. And keep in mind that as the beetles are developing, they typically are continuing to add new galleries in the tree where they started. But once the tree is dying or dead, the beetles are leaving that tree to find new hosts where they can establish new galleries. So you've got a million beetles in a tree, and they're going to all be pumping out and attacking other trees in the area. So that's why we want to get rid of those amplifiers, is that will allow us to basically manage a much less severe problem.
Great, thank you. Scott is asking, what is preying on the beetles?
Not a lot. What is preying on them? So keep in mind the beetles' life cycle. They spend most of their life inside those galleries. So there's not a lot of things that are going to get in there to reach them. At University of California, Riverside, they are looking at several parasitoid wasp species that are found in the native range of this beetle. Places like Vietnam, Taiwan, Thailand. There have been some promising species, but bringing those back and releasing them is a very lengthy process, and it's extremely involved. We don't want to be bringing new things into our environment that potentially could get loose and have other negative consequences on other species that we have here. So when we find a potential parasitoid, there's a long process involved where they're kept in a very secure environment. You've got to raise multiple generations because they're feeding on, in this case, the shothole borer. You also have to be raising the shothole borers that they can feed on. So you're raising generations of that, raising generations of the parasitoid. Then they have found issues with some of the parasitoid wasps that they've been trying to raise, where several generations down, they become predominantly one sex or the other, and then they eventually die out. So they're continuing to search for new species that might be applied in this way.
Great. And we have about 10 questions. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get through all of them, but I'll just go in the order that they were asked in. Phil is asking, I work with school district IPM programs. In fact, I'm leading a Zoom training in a couple of weeks with maybe 200 participants. Is there a playing card deck or hard stock flip book with various priority invasives that school landscape personnel can use for basic reference? There's a whole lot of acreage and potential hosts managed by schools around the state. I'll briefly mention Shothole burrs in my presentation.
Oh, that's a really good question. I know there's a lot of resources out there. In most cases, they are specific to individual pests, or conversely specific to individual types of plants or trees. I'm not aware, although there's a lot of people on this call that may know better than I do. We do have a field guide specific to shothole borer. I believe there's one for gold spotted oak borer as well. So if he wants to leave information about where we could reach out with further information, happy to follow up on that.
All right, so Robert is asking, now that Southern California steelhead have been listed, and given that many of the hosts are riparian trees, are any best practices or control programs being developed to address infestations in salmonid stream habitats where pyrethroid and other insect applications may be problematic?
I'm not sure I caught all of that question. So I got part of it. So we're talking about the effects of certain pesticides like pyrethrins in aquatic environments.
Yes.
Does it go beyond that, or is that
just the connection between, listed species and potential impacts of herbicides while trying to get rid of the shothole borers, I think, is the thrust of the question.
So this question actually is not limited to shothole borer or any one specific pest, but there are restrictions on the label of pesticides in terms of how they can be used, what level they can be applied at, where they can be applied. There's a lot of these chemicals that cannot be applied in a riparian or near water of any kind. And in that case, you look for other ways of resolving the particular issue, which in many cases gets you back to the mechanical, removing the tree, removing branches, properly disposing of that wood.
Okay.
I'd like to intervene just for a second.
Sure.
We're approaching the 1 o'clock hour, and I believe Randall might be available to stay over the hour to answer more questions. Does that remain true, Randall?
That remains true, yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so those of you who need to leave, we much appreciate your interest and attendance today. And for those of you who can stay, please hang in there and we'll try to get through all of the questions.
Did we put the
Oh, no,
link to the
thank you.
survey?
Thank you.
Survey, yes. Let me grab that link real quick.
And while Constance is reposting that, thank you for the reminder. Those of you who need to go, if you can take a moment and answer this voluntary survey, it will help us with future planning and presentations. The answers will.
All right, I have just put it in the chat. Okay. Catherine is asking, if we suspect an infestation of a shothole borer in a place where it has not been documented before, is there someone we should contact to confirm ID or alert about its presence?
Absolutely. Contact your local agricultural commissioner's office.
Okay.
You can also reach out. There's a reporting tool on the ISHB.org website. You can reach out to your local master gardeners. In many cases, there are subgroups of that are involved with this. And also the California Department of Food and Agriculture, CDFA, has a report a pest hotline and also an online version of that where you can report these things. They have a laboratory at CDFA where they can verify the pest either based on a beetle sample or on a wood tissue sample. However, your best bet is to get the ag commissioner either to take such a sample or provide that to the ag commissioner so that they can send it into the CDFA and not have you get charged for it.
Okay. Fayek is asking, do they know if the San Jose infestation is the polyphagus or Kuroshio?
And the answer is yes, Fayek. It is polyphagus, and it did come from Southern California. So I'm blaming you folks in Los Angeles.
Let's see. Andrea is asking, what year was invasive shothole borer first detected in California?
Okay, that takes us back a while. So, and the answer is kind of a yes, but. So 2003, it was first found, but it was misidentified as T shothole borer, which I said early in the talk is a much more benign pest, not something that people were too concerned about. It took another 9 years before we finally figured out, oh, this is something else. This is polyphagus shothole borer, and it's a real problem. So, so the early 2010 era is kind of what we're looking for, a little over a decade ago.
Okay. Karen is asking, is there any funding available for detection trapping from USDA or CDFA?
Again, this is a problematic question. So the California Invasive Species Advisory Council, and actually they're an advisor to the invasive species, I should have said committee. They're an advisor to the Invasive Species Council of California. They authorized funding for counties to trap pests going forward, trap invasive shothole borer going forward. Those funds are currently in the hands of CDFA. I believe they are working on two things right now. One is to try to figure out what the allocation is out to various counties. And secondly, trying to gain a couple $100,000 of additional funds that could be applied toward tree removals. There are funds. They're not allocated as of yet, but it is being worked on.
Okay. Karina is asking, are there theories as to why the beetles are waning in Southern California? They're still here, but not nearly the way they were years ago.
It goes back to what I said earlier in my talk. We don't know that they're actually waning. We have seen, as I said, places where they have implemented an integrated pest management program that includes monitoring and have removed amplifier trees that has reduced pressure, and the populations of the beetles have fallen significantly in those areas. We continue to see them popping up in new areas adjacent to those and places we've never seen them before. There are areas that have not been treated and are not monitored, and we have no idea what's going on there. Unfortunately, a lot of the funding that has gone into support surveying and trapping has just come up. Funding dropped off, and right now a lot of that activity is just not taking place. So we need to be out there. We need to be looking. That's why I hope that people will take this as an impetus to go out and check the trees in their neighborhood. You don't have to be part of some official team to be out there looking to see what's on your trees, what's in your neighborhood, what's in your broader community.
Okay. Jeffrey is asking, are you putting out public service announcements in multiple languages to get this information to the large numbers of non-English speaking landscapers and landowners?
That is a really good question. The answer is we've been fairly limited in what we've done in that area. We do some things in Spanish language. We have not produced things in Vietnamese and some other languages that would be very helpful in some communities. But it's definitely something that we would like to do in the future.
Krista is asking, we are a park in the Bay Area. When planting new landscapes, would you recommend against planting the host trees that are killed or are reproductive hosts?
Okay, that's, again, a really good question. So the first thing we always say when we talk about that reproductive host list and the 17 trees that are most severely affected and killed by the pest disease complex is it is not a do not plant list. But remember, we had that management matrix. So one of the last steps involved there is replanting. And what do you replant? Well, that's something that really depends on your site conditions, what's still taking place in terms of amplifier trees. One of the best examples of this was UC Irvine, where I said they took out close to 1,000 trees. UC Irvine's campus was pretty close to being a monoculture at one point. It was heavily overweighted towards sycamore trees. And it was one of the first places that was heavily damaged by this pest disease complex. It is where a lot of the management techniques related to this pest were developed and tested. So we owe a lot to the folks at UC Irvine and the researchers from UC Riverside and UC A&R who went out and developed those various management tools and techniques. So at UC Irvine, they removed these 1,000 trees, amplifier trees, and this was the question: what do they replant with? So their first consideration was, we don't want to have a monoculture ever again. You know, you see this in a lot of street tree approaches, one species of tree all the way down the street. It's really not a good practice. You want to have a diverse tree base. This is especially true in the urban environment, perhaps less true in more of a wilderness park environment. But the diversity is important. The second thing they looked at is what trees have fared best in terms of being attacked by the pest and able to survive. So they looked at that list, and those were some of the ones that they said, we'll replant a lot of these. They consulted with arborists and all kinds of groups to try to come up with what types of things they should replant with. They developed a list of trees that they would plant. They had a whole strategy for how they did that, where they're layering one type of tree. Perhaps they have 2 or 3 of them, and then there's another kind right behind that and next to it. So they did a really good job with that and diversifying. So now we're 8 years out. They're starting to look now at, okay, maybe now we're ready to go ahead and plant sycamores again. They're not going to do it like it's going to be a monoculture. So if you're managing a park and you're wondering about, do I replant natives? Do I replant the same thing I have there? You have to look at what the conditions are there. Are you heavily weighted to one species? Like, are they Are they, 90% sycamore? Orange County Parks dealt with that issue, and so they've diversified a bit, but they're still planting some of those same trees. But get rid of those amplifiers first before you do any replanting.
All right, it's 12 past. We still have about 15 questions. So it doesn't sound like we're going to be able to get to all of them, but I can keep asking, or
Sure.
people can email you later, whatever.
That'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, Julie, you said you put my email in the chat. Is that right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great.
Should we do one or two more?
Sure, let's go.
Great. Okay. Andrea is asking, it seems like most of the reproductive hosts that are killed are native species, but most of the hosts not killed are non-native species. Is there a reason for this?
I don't think that statement is necessarily true, but yeah, if I look at that list, a lot of them are natives. Some of that probably relates to more to the type of tree it is, softer wood, like the box elder is a native, but the wood is like really soft, and it's easy for the beetle to get into that, and for some reason it's very attractive to the pest. So it's probably more factors like that than just native versus non-native.
Okay. Adrian is asking, are we actively surveying for these bugs in restoration projects of riparian areas? Many of these trees are mulched and relocated to other properties.
Yeah, really good question. Are we? Hopefully the answer is yes. I think you would have to go to each project to find out what they're doing along those lines. Again, our typical recommendation is with when you're talking about mulching is, if it's an area where this pest has been, you don't move that mulch to some other area. You leave it basically on site, just grind it as small as possible, and then you can use it as mulch there, but don't relocate that mulch.
Another mulch question. Are wood chips from your local improvement store generally safe since they are cut down to about an inch?
They're also highly processed, highly regulated. So I would say, yeah, they're much safer. I'm not going to say that wood chips from anywhere are, 100% safe, but you're probably pretty well off. Although, I've bought chips many times that have had ants and other things in there. So, you just never know. One thing I will say though is, there are places where you can call up and order a mulch drop off from unknown sources, or you can buy mulch from somebody just down the street, or sometimes they say it's free mulch. Go ahead and take it. Unless you are very sure about where that mulch came from and why the tree was taken down, I'd be very hesitant to work with that kind of stuff.
Randall, we have excuse me, Constance, we have a few questions as people are dropping off. Where will the recording be posted?
It will be posted on the same site where you went to learn about these talks and register.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Julie. Someone is asking, will more Bay Area trainings for arborists, etc., be coming?
Yes, they will. But the thing to look forward to next is on July 18th. There will be a morning webinar through Zoom, the third annual ISHB FD symposium. So it's only online this year, and the reason we're doing it that way is We've had interest not just from the Bay Area, but also from places like Sacramento, which is a potential place for this to go next and could be pretty dramatically affected by this pest. So we're trying to make that symposium open to as wide of a group as possible this year. And so there'll be more information coming out on that through UC A&R and other sources in the not too distant future. But the actual registration probably won't be out there until like the 1st of July.
Okay. Scott is asking about what about a native predator to the fungi?
That is a really good idea. And that's sort of what the research that Dr. Shannon Lynch is working on, where she's working with what we call endophytes. So these are bacteria or other fungi that are actually either in the internal to the trees or internal to the soils around the trees. And they've actually identified some of those that do prevent the fusarium from spreading and the other pathogenic fungi that are found with this pest from spreading and can actually attack it. Some of the problems with that is, okay, so it's effective in the lab, but how do you actually get it into the trees? Soil drenches was one idea. I don't think that's quite there yet. But the other thought is that you can inoculate saplings before you replant, but that's going to be a kind of a long process. So anyway, that research continues to take place. Hopefully it'll bear fruit in the not too distant future.
Hey, Karen is asking, are there any funds available for detection trapping since the end of the CAL FIRE grant in Southern California? Many counties are facing budget cuts and will not be able to sustain detection activities without funding.
That goes back to what I said earlier. So the funds currently are in the hands of CDFA, and they're working on the allocation process and also trying to get some additional funds that can be applied both to trapping and tree removals.
Okay. Someone is asking, are there plans for surveys / the ability to report amplifier trees being assessed, both healthy and potentially infested?
Yes, but who's doing those and where they're doing them? It's somebody made a comment a couple of weeks ago about it seems like a lot of this stuff is becoming more decentralized than it used to be. And I think there is some truth to that idea that, in a lot of cases, this group over here will be surveying in their particular area, but then how does that get communicated outward? And there are efforts to try to coordinate a lot of that information, primarily working through UC Cooperative Extension. But there's a lot of agencies involved in this whole process, from U.S. Forest Service to CAL FIRE to, the list just goes on and on. The local ag commissioners' offices, local nonprofits, NGOs.
Okay, and our last question. For Bacillus subtilis for treating pruning cuts, is it a specific variety? And this follow-up comment is cease biofungicide has B subtilis.
Yeah, cease is a commercial name for that product.
Okay, and those are our questions.
All right.
Oh, hang on. Oh, one more from Brenda, coming in hot. How has this infestation affected wildfires to date?
That is a great question, and I do not know the answer to that. I don't think anybody knows specifically, although it has been looked at both with this pest, with gold spotted oak borer, and also most recently up in the Napa Sonoma Lake County area with respect to another pest, the Mediterranean oak borer, which sometimes people lump that in with invasive shothole borer. It's very similar insect. It's a different family, so not closely related, but about the same size. It only attacks a couple types of oak trees, but they've had some pretty massive fires going through that area, and they've tried to look at it from two directions. One, what is the impact of fires with respect to the pest? And two, what's the impact of the pests in terms of intensifying the fires? I don't think we have answers yet on either of those.